When a woman loves you madly, one of the first things that changes is not what she says to the world, but what she's willing to reveal to you. Emotional vulnerability is not something she hands out casually. It's costly. It exposes her to judgment, rejection, and misunderstanding. So when she opens that door without being pushed, without being interrogated, without being emotionally cornered, you should pay attention. This isn't accidental. It's intentional trust. You see, vulnerability is the currency of deep connection. From a psychological standpoint, the human mind is wired to protect the self. We create stories, masks, humor, toughness, anything that keeps us from being seen too clearly. For many women, this protective layer is even stronger because past experiences have taught them that openness can be used against them. So when she starts sharing her fears, her doubts, her childhood wounds, her moments of shame or confusion, she is doing something profoundly intimate. She is saying, without saying it, I believe you will not weaponize my truth. This is where many men misunderstand what they're being offered. They think vulnerability is emotional dumping or weakness or drama, but that interpretation comes from immaturity. In reality, vulnerability is strength under control. It's a conscious lowering of defenses in the presence of someone perceived as safe. Philosophically speaking, it's an act of faith. She is trusting that you have the emotional capacity to hold what she gives you without needing to fix it, mock it, dismiss it, or retreat from it. And here's the key distinction. She doesn't become vulnerable because you demanded it. She becomes vulnerable because you earned it. Your consistency, your calm, your restraint, your ability to listen without interrupting, these things signal psychological safety. When you don't rush to judge or advise, when you don't make her emotions about your ego, when you remain grounded while she's exposed, something powerful happens. Her nervous system relaxes. Her mind associates you with peace rather than threat. This is also why vulnerability deepens attraction rather than killing it, when handled correctly. Many men fear that emotional depth makes them less desirable. The opposite is true. What kills attraction is emotional chaos, not emotional honesty. When she senses that you are stable enough to witness her inner world without being overwhelmed by it, you become rare. You stand apart from the men who panic, disappear, or turn cold the moment emotions appear. Notice how this vulnerability often arrives quietly. It's not always tears. Sometimes it's a pause before she speaks. Sometimes it's a sentence she's never said out loud before. Sometimes it's her admitting she doesn't have everything figured out. These moments are invitations. How you respond determines whether the door stays open or slams shut permanently. If you interrupt, minimize, or try to dominate the moment, she will retreat. Not dramatically, internally, but if you stay present, if you listen more than you speak, if your energy says you're safe here, her attachment deepens. Because now, love isn't just emotional, it's neurological. Her brain links you with relief, comfort, and understanding. And this matters because a woman who feels emotionally safe with you doesn't just love you harder, she loves you longer. Emotional vulnerability is not a phase, it's a foundation. It's the soil where loyalty, intimacy, and devotion grow. Without it, everything else is performance. So the question isn't whether she becomes vulnerable. The real question is whether you're the kind of man who can handle the truth she's brave enough to share. Because when someone trusts you with their inner world, the responsibility is not to control it, but to honor it. When a woman loves you madly, her priorities begin to reorganize themselves around you, not in a desperate way, not in a self-abandoning way, but in a deeply intentional one. This is where many people get confused because they expect love to look loud. They expect grand gestures, constant attention, dramatic declarations. But mature love doesn't announce itself like that. It restructures behavior quietly. It shows up in consistency, in effort, in the way she chooses you, even when choosing you costs her something. From a psychological perspective, attention is one of the clearest indicators of value. We all make time for what matters. We rearrange schedules, adjust energy, and allocate focus based on internal priorities, not external promises. So when a woman begins to consistently show up for you, emotionally, mentally, and practically, without being chased or guilted into it, that's not coincidence. That's attachment backed by intention. Notice the word consistency. Anyone can be intense for a short period. Anyone can be affectionate when it's convenient. Love reveals itself when effort persists, even when circumstances are imperfect. When she checks in without needing a reason. When she remembers the details you forgot you mentioned. When she follows through on what she says she'll do. These are not habits of infatuation, they are behaviors of commitment. Philosophically, this is where desire transforms into devotion. Desire wants what feels good now. Devotion asks, what does this connection need to stay alive? When she starts thinking in those terms, about sustainability rather than stimulation, you're no longer just someone she's attracted to. You're someone she's investing in. This often shows up in subtle sacrifices. She may choose understanding over winning an argument. She may adjust her tone instead of escalating conflict. She may protect your image in rooms where you're not present. These actions don't make headlines, but they reveal character. Love at its core is not about possession, it's about protection. When she loves you madly, she protects the bond as if it's something fragile and valuable. Because to her it is. What's important here is that this effort is freely given. The moment effort feels forced, negotiated, or transactional, it loses its meaning. But when it flows naturally, when she wants to make your life easier, not because you demanded it, but because your presence matters to her, that's when you see the depth of her feeling. She's not performing love, she's living it. Many men miss this because they're focused on intensity instead of reliability. They chase emotional highs and overlook emotional steadiness. But a woman who loves you madly doesn't just bring passion. She brings structure. She becomes someone you can count on. And that reliability is incredibly rare in a world addicted to novelty. There's also a neurological layer here. Consistent effort builds emotional safety. Safety strengthens attachment. Attachment deepens love. It's a reinforcing cycle. The more she experiences you as someone worth investing in, the more her behavior aligns with long-term bonding. This is why her actions begin to mirror partnership rather than pursuit. The question then shifts from does she love me to am I worthy of the consistency she's offering? Because love like this requires stewardship. If you take it for granted, it fades. If you respect it, it grows. So pay attention not to how dramatic her feelings seem, but to how reliably she shows up. Because when a woman loves you madly, she doesn't just feel deeply, she acts deliberately. And deliberate love is the kind that lasts. When a woman loves you madly, something profound begins to happen beneath the surface. Her emotional defenses soften. This is not weakness, it's trust. And psychologically, trust is one of the most expensive currencies a human being can offer. Attraction may open the door, but vulnerability is what allows someone to step fully inside. Most people walk through life armored. They protect themselves with humor, distance, control, or indifference, not because they are cold, but because they have learned that exposure carries risk. So when a woman starts revealing parts of herself she doesn't show the world, her fears, insecurities, doubts, past wounds, that is not casual conversation. That is intimacy in its rawest form. Here's where many men misunderstand the moment. They hear vulnerability and think it's a problem to solve. They rush to fix, correct, or advise. But vulnerability is not a request for solutions. It's a test of safety. She is unconsciously asking, if I show you who I really am, will you stay steady? Or will you use it against me from a psychological standpoint? Self-disclosure only happens when the nervous system feels regulated in someone's presence. In other words, she feels emotionally safe with you. Your tone, your reactions, your patience, these signal whether you are a refuge or a threat. When she loves you madly, her system relaxes around you. She exhales, she stops performing and starts being. You'll notice this in how she speaks. Her words become less filtered, more reflective. She may share contradictions about herself. She may admit uncertainty. She may tell you things she has never said out loud. This is not because she is unstable. It's because love creates a space where honesty feels survivable. Philosophically, this is where love shifts from desire to recognition. Desire wants to be seen, love wants to be known. And being known is terrifying because it removes the illusion of control. When she allows you access to her inner world, she is saying, I trust you with my truth. This is also why emotional intimacy often deepens before physical intimacy becomes meaningful. When a woman loves you madly, closeness stops being purely physical and starts becoming existential. She wants you to understand how she thinks, what shaped her, what scares her about the future. She is not bonding through excitement alone. She is bonding through understanding. And here's the key insight most people miss. Vulnerability increases attachment. Neuroscience shows that shared emotional exposure strengthens relational bonds far more than shared pleasure. Pleasure is memorable. Vulnerability is unforgettable. It creates a sense of us against the world, even if the world is quiet in that moment. But this only works if you meet vulnerability with maturity. If you dismiss it, mock it, minimize it, or later weaponize it during conflict, you don't just damage the connection, you destroy the bridge she crossed to reach you. A woman who feels unsafe after opening up will not argue more. She will simply close off, and once that door shuts, it rarely opens the same way again. She loves you madly. She doesn't want perfection from you. She wants presence. She wants emotional steadiness. She wants to feel that her truth is held, not judged. This is why your response matters more than your words. Silence with empathy is often more powerful than advice with ego. If you want to recognize deep love, listen to what she entrusts you with, not what she posts publicly, not what she jokes about, but what she whispers when the world is quiet. Because when a woman gives you access to her inner life, she is giving you the part of herself that actually loves. And the question is not whether she's opening up. The real question is whether you're strong enough to hold what she reveals without trying to change it, control it, or run from it. When a woman loves you madly, her behavior begins to orient toward the future, and not in a dramatic, fantasy-driven way, but in subtle, practical shifts that reveal long-term thinking. This is one of the clearest psychological markers of deep attachment. She starts to factor you into her decisions without being asked. This isn't about losing independence. In fact, it's the opposite. Mature love doesn't erase identity, it integrates it. When she loves you deeply, she doesn't abandon her life, she reorganizes it. Her time, energy, and priorities begin to move with a quiet gravity towards you, not because she is needy, but because attachment has rewired what feels meaningful. Psychologically, this is called future inclusion. The human mind only invests long-term planning energy into what it perceives as stable and valuable. If you're temporary, you stay in the present tense. If you're significant, you appear in her future language, sometimes without her even noticing. She says we instead of I. She talks about plans months ahead and instinctively assumes you're there. This isn't manipulation, it's bonding. You'll see it in small sacrifices. She adjusts her schedule, she makes room, she chooses differently than she used to, not out of obligation, but alignment. These sacrifices aren't loud or resentful, they're quiet, voluntary, and consistent. And that consistency matters more than intensity. Anyone can make a grand gesture once. Love shows up in repeated, unannounced adjustments. From a philosophical perspective, this is where love becomes an act rather than a feeling. Feelings fluctuate. Commitment reveals itself through choice. When she loves you madly, she chooses you even when it costs convenience. Not because she fears losing you, but because being close to you feels worth the cost. Many men misread this moment. They either take it for granted or test it. They push boundaries to see how much she'll bend. This is where attraction can die, because sacrifice given freely is a gift, but sacrifice demanded becomes a burden. The moment she feels her effort is expected rather than appreciated, love begins to drain into resentment. What's important to understand is that women don't sacrifice for potential. They sacrifice for certainty. Not certainty that you're perfect, but certainty that you are consistent, grounded, and emotionally present. If she feels you are unstable, unclear, or self-centered, her instinct is not to sacrifice more. It's to protect herself. This is why love often deepens when a man stays rooted in his own purpose. Paradoxically, when you don't demand her world, she is more willing to make space for you in it. When you don't chase her time, she offers it. When you don't cling, she leans in. Emotional maturity creates safety, and safety allows generosity. Another key signal here is how she supports your growth. A woman who loves you madly doesn't just want your attention, she wants your evolution. She encourages your discipline, your goals, your improvement. Not because she wants to change you, but because she sees your potential as something worth investing in. She doesn't compete with your purpose, she protects it. And if conflict arises, and it will, you'll notice something telling she still tries. She doesn't disappear at the first sign of discomfort. She communicates. She seeks understanding, not victory. That effort is not weakness. It's attachment fighting to stay intact. Ultimately, love reveals itself not in words, but in what someone is willing to rearrange for you. Time is rearranged, energy is redirected, the future is adjusted. So if you want to know whether a woman loves you madly, stop listening for promises. Watch her choices. Watch what she moves, what she makes room for, what she protects, because love doesn't announce itself. It reorganizes life around what truly matters. When a woman loves you madly, she begins to reveal parts of herself she normally keeps guarded. Not because she is weak, but because, say, she trusts the emotional container you represent. This is one of the most misunderstood signs of love, especially by men who mistake vulnerability for emotional chaos or drama. In reality, vulnerability is discipline. It is the mind choosing exposure over protection because it senses safety. Psychologically, people only open their inner world when they believe the listener will not misuse it. A woman who loves you deeply doesn't just share stories, she shares meaning. Her fears, past disappointments, unresolved wounds, and even her contradictions start to surface. Not all at once, and not theatrically. It happens gradually, in moments that feel almost accidental, but nothing about it is accidental. This kind of openness is not about seeking validation, it's about emotional bonding. When she speaks honestly about her insecurities or her past, she is inviting you into her inner narrative. She is saying, without words, I trust you with the parts of me that could be hurt. That level of trust is never given casually. Many men fail here because they try to fix instead of hold space. They interrupt vulnerability with solutions, logic, or dismissiveness. But when a woman opens up from a place of love, she's not asking for repair. She's asking for presence, the ability to listen without judging, without minimizing, without turning the focus back to yourself is what deepens her attachment even further. Philosophically, vulnerability is a surrender of control. It's an acknowledgement that connection matters more than self-defense. And when a woman loves you madly, she makes that surrender consciously. She stops performing. She stops editing herself. She lets you see the real emotional texture of who she is, not the polished version meant for the world. This is also why her emotional reactions may feel more intense around you. Love amplifies stakes. When you matter deeply, your words land harder. Your absence feels heavier. Your approval carries more weight. This isn't instability. It's emotional investment. The danger is not her intensity. The danger is a man who doesn't know how to respond to it with steadiness. A grounded man doesn't absorb her emotions or push them away. He remains centered. He listens, reflects, and responds with clarity. That calm presence becomes an anchor. Over time, she associates emotional relief with you, not because you solve her problems, but because you don't collapse under them. Another subtle sign here is honesty without strategy. When she loves you madly, she stops playing emotional chess. She tells you when something bothers her instead of testing you. She expresses needs instead of manipulating outcomes. That shift alone is a massive indicator of trust. Games disappear when love feels safe, but this level of openness also comes with responsibility. Once she reveals her inner world, she is watching what you do with it. Do you respect it? Do you remember what matters to her? Do you use her vulnerability as ammunition during conflict? Nothing kills love faster than emotional betrayal. A woman can forgive many things, but not the misuse of her trust. If you want to deepen this bond, your role is simple but demanding: consistency. Be emotionally predictable, not boring, but stable. Let your words align with your actions. Let your reactions align with your values. Over time, she will open even more, not because you asked, but because you proved you were safe. Love doesn't grow through grand gestures alone. It grows in quiet moments where someone feels seen, heard, and protected without being controlled. And here's the truth worth reflecting on. When a woman trusts you with her vulnerability, she has already chosen you emotionally. The only question left is whether you are mature enough to hold what she has given you. When a woman loves you madly, her sense of time begins to change, and this is one of the deepest, least discussed signs of real love. She doesn't just experience you in the present moment, she subconsciously starts placing you into her future. This isn't something she announces directly. It shows up in subtle behavioral shifts that reveal long-term emotional commitment. Psychologically, the human brain does not invest future-oriented thinking in something it sees as temporary. When a woman starts adjusting her decisions, routines, and priorities with you in mind, it means you've crossed from being an experience to being an anchor. She begins to factor you into her plans, not because she needs you, but because she wants continuity with you. You'll notice this when she talks about upcoming events and naturally includes you. Not in a forced way, not with pressure, but casually. We should try that someday. You'd love this place. Next year, I want to... And you're already there in the sentence. This isn't fantasy, it's emotional projection. She's aligning her internal timeline with your presence. Philosophically, love at this level is about integration. She's no longer guarding her independence from you. She's merging rhythms. That doesn't mean losing herself. It means she sees you as an extension of her emotional environment, someone whose presence adds stability, not threat. Another sign appears in how she protects the bond. When a woman loves you madly, she doesn't entertain ambiguity. She becomes less available to outside distractions, not because she's forcing loyalty, but because her emotional bandwidth is already occupied. Attention follows. Attachment. She doesn't need to announce boundaries. Her behavior enforces them. This is where many men misunderstand devotion. They think love means constant reassurance or dramatic expression. In reality, love shows up as consistency. She shows up when she says she will. She remembers what matters to you. She supports your growth, even when it doesn't directly benefit her in the moment. That willingness to invest without immediate return is a profound marker of love. There's also a quiet form of sacrifice that appears here. Not self-abandonment, but prioritization. She may adjust her schedule, compromise on preferences, or make room for your goals alongside hers. This isn't submission, it's cooperation. Love at its highest level is not dominance or dependence, it's alignment. But here's the critical part. When a woman loves you madly, she watches how you treat the future she's offering. Are you present or evasive? Do you lead with clarity or hide behind ambiguity? A man who avoids direction creates anxiety, even in a loving woman, not because she wants control, but because uncertainty erodes trust. Emotionally mature women don't fear effort, they fear wasted investment. If she senses that you enjoy her devotion without matching her intentionality, love begins to turn into self-protection. Not immediately, but inevitably. This is why masculine leadership matters here. Leadership doesn't mean control. It means decisiveness, vision, and emotional steadiness. When you acknowledge her effort, reciprocate consistency, and move with purpose, you validate her choice to love you deeply. And perhaps the strongest sign of all, she stands with you publicly and privately. She doesn't undermine you in front of others. She defends your character when you're not present. Loyalty, in this sense, isn't blind, it's chosen. She chooses you even when you're not in the room. At this stage, love is no longer just a feeling, it's a commitment expressed through behavior. And behavior, unlike words, is expensive. It costs time, energy, and emotional risk. So if you recognize these signs, understand what's being placed in your hands. Love at this level is rare and fragile. The final truth is this: when a woman aligns her future with you, she's already taken the emotional risk. What determines the outcome is whether you have the courage and discipline to meet her there.